The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privileges of the floor will kindly retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will please stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Dr. Donald D. Bender, Poick Episcopal Church, Lorton. Reverend Bender, thank you.
Let us bow our heads in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we pause here at the start of the morning hour to give thanks for the many blessings you have bestowed upon our nation and our Commonwealth, and also to remember before you the birthday today of the father of our country, your servant, George Washington. When he was yet a lad, he copied by hand the 110 rules of civility and decent behavior, and went on to pattern his life after them, seeking to be, for those in his company, the very model of the Christian gentleman. When he was a young man, he found himself caught in a hail of gunfire and looked to your divine providence to preserve his life for his continued work in your service. When plunged into the depths of despair at Valley Forge, he knelt before you in prayer, seeking your grace to sustain both himself and those under his command in their struggle for freedom against imperial tyranny. And when our young nation was sorely divided under the Articles of Confederation, he again heeded your call to service, laboring tirelessly to join together the many peoples of this land so that we might truly become the United States of America. Bestow these same mercies upon our governor, lieutenant governor, and the senators and delegates of this General Assembly, that they may continue to be inspired by his noble example and rise to meet the many challenges of our age. And finally, we pray that you would kindle within all your people our founding fathers' spirit of public service and self-sacrifice for the common good, that working together we may not only preserve, but further advance the blessings of liberty for which Washington and our founders so mightily labored. Amen. Amen.
The clerk will please call the roll. All those present will please vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Tuesday, February 21st, 2017.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Sorvell, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes increasing to 7.
Ayes 33, noes 7. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will please report any communication from the House of Delegates. The senator from James City County.
Good morning, Mr. President. I respectfully move we waive the reading of any communications received from the House of Delegates.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the communications from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 4.
Ayes 36, noes 4. The reading of the communication is waived. The clerk will please report any communications from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The time has come to recognize visitors to the gallery and take up other matters of the morning hour. The senior senator from Fairfax City, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I want to call your attention in the gallery to two of the people who worked as interns in my office this year, Brandon Waller and Hunter Vermonten. Brandon is a senior at the University of Richmond, and he's majoring in political science. He's also on the football team at the University of Richmond. I believe it was linebacker. And ultimately, he's had a lot of internships with the DeBoer Foundation, Ortho, Virginia. He's volunteered with the Richmond Autism Network as a camp counselor, and he wants to go into healthcare and healthcare administration. That's if he doesn't wind up in the NFL. Hunter Vermonten has a political science degree from ODU, He was vice president of Pi Sigma Alpha Political Honor Society, and he participated in the Model UN. He's also interned for Forensic Psychology Associates, and he's also interested in an international security and counterterrorism career. And I would ask that you would send them the welcome of the Senate today.
Thank you, Senator. Would Brandon Waller and Hunter Vermaeten please rise? Welcome to the gallery, and thank you all very much for your help with a good senator from Fairfax County. And it's good to know that we have a spider and a monarch with us today. And if you do give NFL a look, I hope you give the Redskins a good look, because they're going to need a little bit of help. So anyway, we wish you all the best in your educational endeavors, and thanks for all your good work. I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Brandon and Hunter the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for the purposes of two introductions.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we have with us in the gallery two individuals that have a number of claim to fame. First is Mo Ali Cox, who's a forward on the VCU basketball team. Mo also has two other claims to fame. He interned in my office last year, but more importantly, he is Reagan's friend. And then we also have Jordan Burgess. Jordan is a guard on the VCU basketball team as well this year, and this is Jordan's first visit to the Senate, and he's being shown around by Mo and somebody who's also related to me. If you would offer them the warm welcome of the Senate. And Mr. President, they are in the last week of their season, much like us in the last week of our legislative process, and they are very excited for that end to be coming, as we are very excited for our end to be coming, and we're happy that they're spending part of their last week with us.
Well, thank you, Senator. Would Mo and Jordan and also Ms. McDougal please rise? Thank you all for being with us this morning, and just you all have had so many just great accomplishments in your schooling and on the basketball court, and just we appreciate and thank you for all your efforts, and thanks for helping the good senator from Hanover. And to Dr. McDougal, as you've already seen, please be here as often as you can to keep that crowd behaving over there in that corner. So it's always good to see you. So I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Dr. McDougal, Mo, and Jordan the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, rise for a second introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we also have a group of individuals in the gallery from the Goddard School. It is the kindergarten class of the Goddard School, and they are accompanied by a number of parents and the owner and director of the Goddard School, Kathy Donoso. Mr. President, I would tell the body that this is the kindergarten that Reagan will be in next year, and this is their first visit to the Capitol as well, and they had a great tour of the facility, and we probably have some aspiring leaders in the bunch. If you could offer them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I will. Thank you, Senator. Would members from the Goddard School, the kindergarten class, please rise? Can you all please stand up? That is wonderful. And if you look up on the big screen, you can see yourself. If you want to wave to yourself. There you go. Now you've got it. And so that's the first step. The next step is to be elected and be one of these senators. And then all you have to do is push green or red. So it's an easy job. And I know that you all can do it. So thanks for being with us today. We hope you have a wonderful stay, and keep working hard in school. Keep listening to your teachers, and keep obeying your parents, and things will work out very well for you. So I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering the kindergarten class from Goddard School the warm welcome of the Senate. The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteffe.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Today in the gallery, we have the young men from the Men of Faith. These young men and their mentors and leaders are here today joining us in the Capitol, and they were in the General Assembly building earlier. And just like our military members who stood on the backs and the shoulders of those who forged the way for them, these leaders and future leaders are standing on the backs of the leaders that are with the men of faith, forging the way for them and their future. These young men are bright, they're energetic, and they've got bright futures in front of them. And Mr. President, I believe we're going to see a few of them in the Senate here in the next 15 or 20 years.
Thank you, Senator. Would the members of Men of Faith please rise? What a great group you have with us this morning, and thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and thanks for all the things that you advocate for and work hard for in our communities. Thanks for all your involvement as community leaders, and we do hope you will have a wonderful stay here today and see a little bit about how policy is made in the Capitol, and hopefully want to come back here and serve the public as well. So I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering the Men of Faith the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, joining or giving our invocation today is the Reverend Donald D. Binder, who I want to introduce to you all. Reverend Binder hails from the Pohick Church. Pohick Church is one of the oldest churches in Virginia. It was founded before, right around 1700, and it's where George Washington and George Mason used to worship. It was originally known as the Mother Church of Northern Virginia before it was named for a neighboring creek, Pohick Church. It's a very historic place. They, in fact, during the Civil War troops inscribed some graffiti on the doorway. It's an interesting place. If you ever visit Mount Vernon, I'd encourage you to stop by. Reverend Binder, this is his 16th time doing our opening morning prayer here on George Washington's 285th birthday today. Reverend Binder got his PhD from Southern Methodist University. He's been the rector at Pohick Church since 2001. The church is a community institution, and he's becoming an institution, both there and here. He's probably the only person that's given the invocation 16 times. And so I would hope the Senate would give him a warm Senate welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Would Reverend Bender please rise? Reverend, thank you so much for being with us this morning and getting us off to a good start. And this is history today being made. In addition to being George Washington's birthday, I think you hold the record for the most times of visiting us. It's number 16. And for those of you that are in the Senate, you probably see that we offer whoever gives the morning prayer a token of our appreciation. They're Jefferson cups. And so I would say that if you are ever in the market for a Jefferson cup, Reverend Bender has 16 of them and could probably offer you a deal. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we hope you're back soon for number 17. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Reverend Bender the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Today, I'd like to welcome Ryan Val, who has been one of our interns since last fall. The work that he has put in during session has been absolutely invaluable, and our office is so grateful. He has a strong desire to learn more about the legislative process and aspires to be an Henrico County police officer. We look forward to working with him further as we head back to our district office next week. Thanks for all of the hard work, Ryan.
Thank you. Would Ryan Val please rise? Ryan, thanks for being with us this morning, and thanks for all of your good work helping the good senator from Henrico. And we appreciate your desire to work in public service and to keep our streets and our community safe. It's so important to us as we move forward. So we wish you the best in that endeavor. I wish you to be safe as well. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Mr. Ryan Val the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us today in the gallery are two outstanding citizens from the McLean area of my district, Mr. Muslim Lakhani and Mr. Sahid Rahim. Mr. Muslim Lakhani and Mr. Sahid Rahim have worked for many years to increase understanding and tolerance between the West and the Muslim world. And Mr. Lakhani, in particular, was honored by the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington for his impressive leadership skills, his charitable efforts, and for inspiring others to build even stronger bridges of compassion and tolerance in today's world. The body may want to note that Mr. Lakhani was actually honored in a Senate Resolution 116 during this General Assembly session. Mr. President, I ask you and my colleagues in the Senate to give Mr. Muslim Lakhani and Mr. Saeed Rahim the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Would Mr. Muslim Lakhani and Saeed Rahim please rise? Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for advocating and make sure that we all understand that we live in a very diverse society and that we're all in this together. So we appreciate you being here with us today, appreciate your visit, and we wish you a wonderful stay in Mr. Jefferson's capital. There's a tremendous amount of history around here, and hopefully you all can take that in. So thanks for being here today, and we hope you come back soon for another visit. I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Mr. Muslim Lakhani and Saeed Rahim the warm welcome of the Senate. Is there any other business for the morning hour? If there are other guests in the gallery that I haven't recognized, we certainly appreciate you being here today, and we welcome you, so thank you. I would ask that the clerk please call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017, page 7. Unfinished business House. House Bill 1534, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can that bill go by for the day?
Without objection, House Bill 1534 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1402, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our amendments and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1485, the House has rejected the Senate amendment.
The Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our amendment and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1525, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The Senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1566, the House has agreed to Senate Amendments 1 through 4 and rejected Amendment 5.
The Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal. The Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, if we could pass that bill by temporarily. Sir.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, House Bill 1566 will go by temporarily.
House Bill 1616, the House has rejected the Senate substitute with amendment.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our amendment and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1692, the House has rejected the Senate amendment.
The Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I ask that we insist on our amendment and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1697, the House has rejected the Senate amendment.
Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that we insist on our amendments and request a committee of conference for HB 1697.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendments and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1709. The House has rejected the Senate amendment.
The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our amendment and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1851. The House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I would ask that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1853. The House has rejected the Senate substitute and ruled as not germane the amendments to the substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I would ask that we recede from our substitute or our amendments and I suppose pass the bill without it.
The amendments are not germane, so you're going to recede to the substitute.
Recede to the substitute. That's right.
From the substitute, yes.
Mr. President.
The senator.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Senator.
So if we're actually voting, are we voting on the House bill as it originally came over?
That would be correct, Senator.
And we are further inquiry?
Yes.
And when we vote, are we voting to pass that bill, or are we voting to just to pass the bill?
If we recede from the substitute, then we would be voting on passing that bill.
So a green vote is to pass, red vote is against?
Yes.
Thank
you. Mr. President, speaking to this.
The senator has the floor.
Just in order to make this abundantly clear, a green vote is going to mean that this bill survives. A red vote means that this bill will in all likelihood go to a violent death. And it was not too long ago, you remember on, I guess, Friday when we had extensive debate on floor amendments that were placed on this bill. All of us, or at least most of us, voted for one of the sets of floor amendments dealing with the diversion or the provision of information to victims of domestic violence, directing them to appropriate resources. I think it's a great idea. And maybe we can get together and pass a bill that does that next year. It would be my hope that we can do that. But this underlying bill is also a great idea. It is providing to victims of domestic violence training. We've got another bill that's working its way through the General Assembly that's going to provide victims of domestic violence with temporary ability to possess a concealed handgun. And this provides a means for them to get appropriate training. And frankly, they may seek a concealed handgun permit, and we want to make sure that they, in the event that they seek that they have access to appropriate training. So, Mr. President, even if you don't like the fact that the House has ruled the amendment non-germane, this is a good bill that really should survive, and it would be my hope that we will recede and that this bill will survive. So I would ask my friends and colleagues to vote green.
Senator, thank you for explaining that. We appreciate that. The question is, shall the Senate recede from its substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 22, noes 18. The Senate recedes from its substitute.
House Bill 1941, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2074, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The senator from Augusta County, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the House insist on its amendments and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2092, the House has rejected the Senate amendment.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you. I would insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Ayes 36, noes 3. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2207, the House has rejected the Senate amendment.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would again insist on our amendments and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendment and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2296, the House has agreed to Senate Amendments 1 and 2 and rejected Amendment 3.
The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate insist on Amendment 3 and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on Amendment number 3 and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2395, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that we insist on our substitute and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2410, the House has rejected the Senate substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I would ask that we insist on our substitute and request a committee conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its substitute and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 2449, the House has rejected the Senate amendments.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that we insist on our amendments and request a committee in conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate insist on its amendments and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
House Bill 1854, the House acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate on House Bill 1854 is named by the Chairman of Rules, Senator McDougall, or Senators Norman, Howell, and Saslaw. House Bill 1926, the House has acceded to the request for a committee of conference. Conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chairman of Rehabilitation and Social Services, Senator Reeves, or Senators Cosgrove, Wexton, and DeSteff. House Bill 2024, the House has acceded to a request for a committee of conference, and conferees on the part of the Senate is named by the Chairman of Courts of Justice, Senator Obenshain, or Senators Obenshain, Peterson, and Peake. We are awaiting House action on the remaining bills in that section.
Madam Clerk, do you want to go to page 8?
Sure.
House Bill 1566, Senator McDougall.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate insist on Amendment Number 5 and request a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. On House Bill 1566 on page 8, the question is, shall the Senate insist on House Amendment 5 and request a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. The motion is agreed to.
Unfinished business, Senate. Senate Bill 800 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Mr. President, I now move that with the recommendation that we reject the House substitute, I now move that we concur with the House substitute. And speaking to that motion,
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, what they've done is our bill, which passed out of the Senate, had some language that protected the patient and made sure that was more specific in this relationship. This bill is, of course, where primary care physicians can enter into contracts that are not insurance with their patients for the providing of primary care. We had an amendment to that, which, of course, spelled out some of the rights and responsibilities of the patient. They rejected that, and they put theirs on top, which do not have those protections in them. So for those reasons, again, Mr. President, with recommendation that we reject the House substitute, I now move its concurrence.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 1, noes 38, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 1, noes 38, Rule 36-1. The substitute is rejected.
Senate Bill 904 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I would move that we agree to the House substitute, and speaking to that,
the senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this deals with workers' compensation commissioners. As this bill left the Senate, it created a new class of persons under our concealed carry laws who are exempt from concealed carry. The House didn't like that. And I suppose that if it made any member in here uncomfortable, the House amendment, believe it or not, should make you feel more comfortable. What the House did was simply took away this additional category of persons who can carry concealed without a permit, and just said that workers' comp commissioners, if they want to carry, they have to get a permit, but they can carry in places where you and I may not be able to carry, like their place of work, a courthouse. So with that, Mr. President, I would move that we concur with which, by the way, they could do under the bill that passed out of here 40-0. So with that, I'd move that we concur with the House substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 1061 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House substitute in speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the bill that dealt with basically a drafting error years ago in the FOIA rules. FOIA rules prevent the disclosure of investigatory information. However, they omitted sheriff's departments, and attorneys in our area have discovered this, and now they can just FOIA anything that's going on. It is very serious. And so while I was presenting the bill before the House, it occurred to me that everyone's in agreement. We need it. We need it fast. And so that's the reason that I suggested we add an emergency clause, and they agreed, and that is the substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 1073 is passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I move that we concur with the House substitute. And speaking to that, this bill simply updates the Bridgewater Charter, and certain members of the House don't like putting in charters that elections are moved to November, even though local governments can, by statute, move their elections to November. And this local government has, for probably 10 years, had its elections in November. They stripped out that provision of the charter. It will not change the date of their election. So to accommodate those idiosyncratic views, I would move that we concur with House substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The Senate concurs with the House substitute.
Senate Bill 1085 is passed the House with amendments.
The junior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Wexton.
Mr. President, I move that the House amendments be agreed to, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, these are purely technical amendments. It's just changing the line in which we reference one code section, and then a reference that had been notwithstanding any other provision of law, making the specific reference to that code section in there. So they're just technical. I would ask that they be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1108 is passed the House with a substitute.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. President, I move that we concur with the House substitute.
The senator has the floor.
Speaking to that motion. Mr. President, this is an ABC bill that passed the Senate 40-0. It allows tour companies that offer restaurant tastings to be able to include the price of alcohol in the price of the ticket sold to the participant in the tour. The House substitute simply confirms that food must be offered on these culinary tours at every stop, and therefore I move that we concur with the House substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1123 is passed the House with amendment.
The senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that the body agree to the House amendment.
Senator has the floor.
As you can see, as printed in the calendar, it inserts "or," so it's a very technical amendment, and ask that the body agree to it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1150 has passed the House with amendments.
The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with the House amendments. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What the House amendment does is it extends the possibility to participate in bar bystanding training to ABC permittees as well as licensees. So they just expand the eligible pool. This is voluntary training. It is a training module that ABC has already created, and it does have some benefits in terms of training those who may serve alcohol to identify potential situations that could lead to perhaps a sexual assault. So we think this is very worthwhile, and I ask that the Senate concur with the House amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1216 has passed the House with amendments.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteffe.
Mr. President, I suggest or I recommend we accept the House amendments. And speaking to the amendments real quick.
Senator has the floor.
What this does is it codifies what's already in regulation. So it says at least 30 minutes, until at least 30 minutes prior to the establishment's closing, which is already in ABC regulations. So the House determined it wanted to codify it, which is benign to the bill. So with that, I request that we accept or concur with the House amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The Senate concurs with the House amendment.
Senate Bill 1226 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the House substitute to Senate Bill 1226.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, what this bill is, if you recall, it allows localities to exempt from FOIA certain proprietary information in connection with solar services agreements. What the House did was simply narrow it somewhat in basically a non-material way, just simply to maintain the FOIA exemption part of the bill, and that's all. And I urge the body to accept the House amendment.
Thank you, Senator.
Or substitute, rather.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1228 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we concur with the House substitute, but recommend that we vote no on this one.
Could you just give a brief explanation, Senator?
Yes, this is a bill dealing with assistance animals. We had not worked out everything among the various parties and with the Attorney General's office on the language on this at the time when it was considered in the House, so they just took it back to the original version to get it in the conference committee.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their vote. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 1, noes 39.
Ayes 1, noes 39. The substitute is rejected.
Senate Bill 1303 has passed the House with amendment.
The senator from Fauquier County, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the House amendment. And speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The House amendment was purely technical in nature. They removed one code section reference that should not have been there.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1307 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Fauquier County, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we also accept the House substitute. In speaking to that motion,
Senator has the floor.
thank you, Mr. President. They made a technical change in reference to how information would appear on the database, and it was at the request of the Auditor of Public Accounts, and I would ask that we please accept that substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1309 has passed the House with amendment.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully ask that we concur with the House amendment and speaking to that, sir.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Senate Bill 1309 deals with fictitious names, sort of a lawyer's bill. If you trade with a fictitious name in Virginia, you're required to file a certificate in several places so that there's public notice of it. This is a bill that I worked with the State Corporation Commission, where we will file the certificate of a fictitious name with the State Corporation Commission. The amendment that was added indicates that this is prospective and does not invalidate any previous filings, and I'd ask that we concur.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1324 has passed the House with amendment.
The senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we reject the amendment and insist on a committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, with the recommendation that it be rejected, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The amendment is rejected.
Senate Bill 1341 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Somerville.
Mr. President, I move that we concur with the House amendments. Speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1341 has to do with the digital authentication of public records. The House basically clarified this to make it clear that it applied to local governments and not just state agencies, excluding the court clerks. The circuit court clerks think they're special, won't have special rules, so it doesn't include them. Other than that, the bill is good, so I move that we accept their amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1387 has passed the House with amendment.
The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. President, I move that we concur with the House amendment and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is another bill that passed the Senate 40-0. It simply confirms that JLARC has the ability to hire outside auditors to perform efficiency and effectiveness audits of state agencies. The House took out some permissive language of when such audits could be done and some language regarding reimbursements for the cost of the audits. But again, this is a bill that simply confirms JLARC has this authority. There is no fiscal impact or requirement that such audits be performed. And I renew my motion that we concur with the House amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1393 has passed the House with amendment.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the committee amendment. Speaking that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, Senate Bill 1393 establishes pilot programs for community solar development. Within the bill, it says that these pilot programs will end at the period unless extended, and the clarifying language here just says extended by act of legislation.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 39, no 0. Rule 36-1, the motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1467 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morriston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House substitute. And speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Bill 1467, the underlying bill allows election officers to begin counting absentee ballots that have to be counted by hand earlier on the day of the election. And I think the House has strengthened this in three ways. They've moved the time from 6 a.m. in the morning till 3 in the afternoon before you can start the count. Expands those that have to take the oath to all those present to make sure that they will not reveal any information that they are privy to. And lastly, it bans the use of any communication devices from the time the count begins until the polls close. And I reiterate my motion that we accept the House substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1486 has passed the House with amendment.
The senator from Stafford, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we concur with the House amendment. And speaking to that,
senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this bill deals with how we treat accidents from law enforcement on their personal insurance records. And what the amendment does, and this is in their official capacity, so what the amendment did was it substituted the language operating the motor vehicle in the performance of his official duties for engaged in law enforcement activity. I think it's not 5 cents worth of difference, but anyway, that's what we did with the bill, and I'd move we concur.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1512 has passed the House with amendments.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House amendments. And speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is the bingo bill. And the bill, if you remember, allows bingo guys to reschedule their bingo games whenever there's a weather event or a holiday. The House thought there were too many holidays involved, so they narrowed it down to state-recognized holidays, including Lee Jackson Day. Can't bingo on that day. And they also made it clear that you can't reimburse volunteers unlimitedly. If you're going to reimburse them, you have to reimburse them for actually documented expenses. You just can't write them a blank check for $50. And so those are the two amendments. I would ask that we concur with the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1539 has passed the House with amendment.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House amendment. This deals with the workforce advisor of the governors. The amendment simply changes the effective date until next January.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1573 has passed the House with a substitute.
Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we reject the House amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Could you just speak to that very briefly, Senator?
Yes, Mr. President, what this bill deals with is the appraisal management companies and independent appraisers. We had a section of the bill that basically said that appraisal management companies cannot employ the appraisal managers, the appraisers themselves, and that's the section they deleted. So I ask that we reject
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 0, noes 40.
Ayes 0, noes 40. The substitute is rejected.
Senate Bill 1587 has passed the House with a substitute.
The senior senator from Bath County, Senator Dean.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we concur with the House substitute. This is the bill that adds Allegheny County to the list of localities that can serve beer and wine at outdoor music festivals. It's a one-word bill. The House substitute simply changes the form of the bill, moves a few words around in the introduction. I'd like to say it's a declaratory bill, but I didn't think it needed any declaratory language. But this amendment does no harm, so I hope we accept it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1588 has passed the House with amendments.
The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate accept the House amendments and speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this deals with the sale of surplus property from the General Assembly building. The House added an emergency because the building will come down relatively quickly. And we also moved some language that would have been in the bill into the Appropriations Act, and so the House took it out of the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendments? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1516, the House insists on its substitute and requests a committee of conference.
The senior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move that we accede to the committee of conference.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate accede to a request for a committee of conference? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to.
Conferees on the part of the Senate on Senate Bill 1516 as named by the Chairman of Education and Health, Senator Newman, are Senators Black, Howell, and Lucas. And we are awaiting House action on the remaining bills in that section.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senator Obenchain, are you prepared to make this motion?
Mr. President, I am prepared.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I haven't the foggiest idea when we're going to elect judges. So let me just say that pursuant to Rule 17 of House Joint Resolution 555, our scheduling resolution, I move that the Senate do now suspend the special and continuing joint order relating to judicial elections until Thursday, tomorrow, February 23, 2017.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, pursuant to Rule 17 of HJR 555, the scheduling resolution, shall the Senate suspend the special and continuing joint order relating to judicial elections until Thursday, February the 23rd, 2017? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The special and continuing joint order is suspended until Thursday, February 23rd, 2017.
Uncontested calendar, House bills on third reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that all of the House bills on the uncontested calendar on the third reading, including all House bills on pages 33 through 39, including House Bill 2251 through House Bill 2356, be placed on their final passage in the block after the adoption of any amendments. Any senator who desires to remove a House bill from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 33 through 39, House Bill 2251 through House Bill 2356 be placed upon their final passage in the block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will please read the number of the bills.
House Bill 2251, reported from the Committee on Finance with amendments, and there is a floor amendment.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, if we could remove that bill from the block, please.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, House Bill 2251 will come out of the block.
House Bill 1837, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
The senator from Augusta County, Senator Hanger.
Mr. President, I would ask that that bill come out of the block.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, House Bill 1837 will come out of the block.
House Bill 1585 is reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. House Bill 1876, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. House Bill 1971, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. House Bill 2017, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to.
House Bill 2178, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology. House Bill 2237, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with an amendment.
The senator from Mecklenburg.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendment.
Question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
House Bill 2354, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute.
Senator from Mecklenburg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
House Bill 2356, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from The question is, we'll give you a break. The question is, shall the House bills pass in block? That is, all bills except for 2251 and 1837. All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass. Returning to page 33 of the calendar. House Bill 2251. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that we accept the committee amendments with a recommendation that we reject the same so that we can get to the floor amendment.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that they be rejected, the question is, shall the House amendments be approved of? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The amendments are rejected. The senator from James City County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor amendment has been distributed on the senator's desk, and I'd ask we waive the reading of it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. The senator from James City County.
Mr. President, I would now ask that the floor amendment be agreed to, and speaking to that motion, sir.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, while this House Bill 2251 takes up 3 pages, the succinct version of it is it creates an optional defined contribution plan. What the floor amendment does is it adds a couple of provisions in it. It continues to have a reenactment clause. But most importantly, under the original bill of 2251, it took some higher education institutions out of the plan, and unfortunately, their proportional amount is about $1 billion of unfunded liabilities. What the floor amendment does is it indicates that an optional defined contribution plan cannot go into effect until 95% of the unfunded liabilities under our current retirement plans have been met. Right now, we're at about 73%. And, Mr. President, from a financial planning standpoint, it did not make a great deal of sense to me to be creating another defined contribution plan when we currently have not funded those three plans that we have. So I would respectfully ask that the floor amendment be agreed to, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is agreed to. The senator from James City County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that House Bill 2251 with the adopted floor amendment pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2251 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes. Moving forward to page 36 of the calendar, House Bill 1837, the senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side whereby the committee substitute was agreed to, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which the substitute was agreed to be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Augusta.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that it be rejected, I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. The senator from Augusta.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. The senator from Augusta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the floor substitute be agreed to, and I'd like to offer an explanation for that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. House Bill 1837, which you have in front of you, deals with licensure or exemptions from licensure for private preschool programs. As you may recall, we previously passed a bill, Senate Bill 1239, which dealt with exemptions from child care licensing, which is a fairly comprehensive bill that had been developed from a study and worked on over the past year with a number of stakeholders. Stakeholders that were involved with private schools, private education schools, were also at the table, but they had another issue which I believe has merit. In fact, this bill, as it came to us by the delegate, House Bill 1837, has merit in that there are a number of schools that could be exempted perhaps from licensure because they have oversight requirements within their associations and are accredited as such. But there's a difference between being accredited as an educational entity and being accredited or licensed to provide safety and health oversight for children, particularly the younger children, in the younger ages 5 and under. So with this, what I'm proposing to do with this substitute is probably this will end up in conference, but there are a number of these schools for young children that can be properly exempted. In fact, I had been offered the opportunity to carry a bill to do this very thing this year as a companion bill to the bill we previously passed, but it felt at that time that it needed more study in order to determine which should be exempted and which shouldn't. Hopefully we can sort that out in conference and have a bill that will effectively exempt from licensure those that could appropriately done. Under the bill as it came to us out of committee actually would have exempted from licensure about 300 and some schools, many of which I think it may be inappropriate to exempt from licensure from safety and health requirements. So with that, Mr. President, I would move that the floor substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is agreed to. The senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1837 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bill passes.
Regular calendar House bills on third reading. House Bill 1490, a bill relating to school board members who engage in war service or are called to active duty in the armed forces of the United States, appointment of acting school board members. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health, and there is a floor substitute.
The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, I move that the floor substitute be agreed to in speaking of that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, as this bill came to us, it had a bit of an odd mechanism for replacing someone who was going to go away and fight for our country if he was in a local school board. It, for the first time, produced an ability for someone to come up with a list, and the list that they gave to the school board as they were leaving to go temporarily to serve the country would be a list that the board would have to select one of their replacements from. That's just a bit odd, and as I've thought about it between now and the committee, I just think it's a bit odd to do that. We cannot know exactly what those individuals, who they will be, and their qualifications. Mr. President, with that, I have produced the substitute, and I worked with the senator from Prince William, the senator from Eastern Fairfax. This substitute basically states that you can suggest names, but it'll be up to the local board to determine whether or not they select one of those names. The system whereby they stay temporarily is in the code. It's been in the code for many years. That's confirmed by Attorney General's office. And the last portion of the code is that there's a reason or explanation that's given for those individuals that if they decide not to appoint one of the names. Mr. President, I hope we would adopt the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Gentleman yield for a question.
Would the senator from Bedford yield?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
And I maybe this should be after these amendment is adopted, but just in general, is there any reason why school boards should be treated differently than General Assembly or Board of Supervisors or any other state official?
Senator from Bedford.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's not my bill, and honestly, I think that reaching out that broadly would not be germane to this bill. It is, I think, a right thing to do for our men and women who are serving, and the code has been very clear over the years that you do have the ability to have someone serving temporarily as opposed to someone serving permanently. You would hate to have someone go away for a month and come back and be basically deposed. So this one related to the school board, the section of the code is the school board, and so that's the reason why to fix this issue, it was only the breadth of the school board that could be reached.
Further question, Mr.
Would the
Chair.
gentleman yield for an additional question?
Yes, sir.
He yields, Senator.
I would ask, and I don't see any prohibition, is there any prohibition on nominating your spouse or your child or an immediate family member to take your position?
Yeah.
Senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, I think the gentleman is raising a number of the issues that brought forward the floor amendment. Basically before, if you decided to nominate individuals of that nature, then you would have to select one of those individuals. That is simply no longer the case. You can do this almost anywhere. You can send a letter and say, here's the people I suggest. Here it's a little bit more formal, but not much more formal, and they do not have to select that individual.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the gentleman from Bedford please yield for a couple of questions?
Would the senator yield?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the gentleman, it says here when someone is called, relieve their duties by his office by reason of engaging in the war service of the United States when called forth by the governor or being called to active duty in the armed forces of the United States. So the governor can call the National Guard to active duty. My question would be, the second part of that, or being called to active duty in the armed forces, would that include members of the Armed Forces Reserves?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, it's my understanding that it would include those that are taking away for all three of those purposes.
I thank the gentleman. One further question.
The senior senator from Chesapeake.
I yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess the other thing, it says engaging in war service of the United States. I know that many times when some of our people are called up, they're called up to do maintenance facilities, maintenance on aircraft, rolling stock, or whatever. Would they be included if they're not actually in a combat zone?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, it would be anticipated that whatever purposes you were taking up, and then we have in other sections talking about active or for war services. So whether it's for war services or any of the active duty, and I think in this case on line 19 it's or, so it's either of the two.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Would the senator from Bedford yield for a question?
Would the senator yield?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
I thank the gentleman. Just wanted to clarify. On line 29 and 30, it says that in which case the school board may consider appointing an acting school board member from such list of names. But then further down, it says if they decide not to appoint a member from the submitted list, they'll notify them and their decision not to appoint an acting member. So if I understand this correctly, the only one who they could appoint on a temporary basis is someone from the list. Is that correct?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, that is not correct. In this case, that they will get the list of names and they may appoint such acting school board members from the list. If the change from the bill earlier is that they shall, and now they may, and then there's just the communicating of that information in the last sentence of the bill.
Final question, sir.
The senator yield for an addition.
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
So could the school board appoint someone on a temporary basis who is not of a name who was not submitted by that person?
Yes, Mr. President, that's the reason for the substitute. So the substitute used to say, the bill used to say shall, and now it says they may, and then it gives the mechanism as to when they do not, they just have to notify. So I think it's pretty clear.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Will the senator from Bedford yield for a question?
Would the senator yield?
Mr. President, I'd love to yield. Yes,
he yields, Senator.
Mr. President, will the senator clarify that, as the existing law is, when the person who is the member, in this case of the school board, comes back from active duty, that person will automatically resume the position of school board member?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, yes, and then my understanding from talking to legislative services, that is throughout the code in a lot of locations. We protect our servicemen and women that may be gone for a month or two, and they don't lose their position, so that's not supposedly new.
Yeah, Mr. President, will the senator yield for another question?
The senator yield for He yields, Senator.
Yes.
It's my understanding the current law is that the bodies that appoint school board members would put a temporary person in place during the time of the absence of the school board member who's on active duty. But the only change here is that person who's leaving on a temporary basis would suggest the names of some people or somebody. In fact, it says they shall submit to the school board a list of names of suitable persons, and that if the school board does not select one of the names that the leaving on a temporary basis school board member suggests, then the school board has to, or rather the appointing official, the school board would have to notify the submitting school board member in writing the rationale for not picking that person. Is that right?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, trying to track the question, I think the question was, are they going to still be able to appoint a temporary individual? And the answer is absolutely yes. Currently on lines 22 and 23, it says that during this period, the acting officer shall be vested with all the powers, authorities, rights, and duties of the regular office holder for whom he is acting.
Mr. President, will the senator yield for another question to clarify?
Mr. President, I yield. Yeah.
He yields, Senator.
Again, if the school board that appoints the temporary person decides not to choose from among the lists given by the absent school board member, they would have to put in writing the rationale for not doing so. And what's the point of that?
The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, the gentleman's correct. On the other ones, maybe not so much, but on that one, he is correct. On this one, the school board, the one item that may be different in this code section now as opposed to others is that he can suggest names. And currently, if you're in another authority outside this code section, you can certainly suggest names. In this code section, it just says give them notice that you did not select the name and give them the reason why they weren't selected. So he's correct about that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senators. The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is agreed to. The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, I move that the bill passes. Speaking of that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this isn't my bill, but I have now become a bit vested in it, I expect. Mr. President, here's the facts. In Virginia, we treat servicemen differently than we treat others. We say if you're requested to go away from war or active duty, then we're going to protect your slot. And this bill says that if you are taken away in the school board, which is the area of this bill, and we can get other bills for other things, you're able to suggest some names. It no longer says 3. You can suggest names like you could do today. You could write a letter. The difference is in this section it says that if you do that, at the end of it, they can choose it, they can not choose it, they can ignore it, but they do, in the last section of the bill, tell you the reason why they decided to go with a different. I would hope that we would pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
The Senate, I oppose this bill. I think it started off as a bad bill. Through this amendment, it became an irrelevant bill. I want to introduce a third option, which is no bill. We already have a statute on the books right now, which is pretty darn good. And by carving out an exception for school boards, now everyone's going to come in with their own exception. The bottom line is all the things that are asked for in this amendment we can do right now. You can already submit a list of names to the council or the school board. Bottom line is I understand the intent is, of course, pure, but the bottom line is we don't need this in the code. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we call these people away, I wish we were not fighting these wars all over the place. I wish we had not started, and I wish we would finish. However, the fact is that there are enormous sacrifices being made by the people who are called away. Some of them are serving in official positions. This particular bill arose from a case in Prince William County, and the initial bill was designed to essentially let the individual select his replacement. That was not practical. I don't think that was reasonable. But what this does is it simply allows him now to suggest names, and it really requires that the board take it seriously, look at it, and then take a position on why they do not accept it, and they're not required to accept it. But I think essentially it allows continuity. That the voters voted this individual into office, and when he's called away, at least he would have that voice that he would be able to say, I recommend these people who would essentially follow in my footsteps. The rest of the board can say, sorry, we don't agree. We don't think that for some reason or other they're satisfactory, and that is their final decision. But at least it requires them to examine it carefully, and I think it's very worthwhile. And I think we really owe this to the people who are called off to the service of our nation. So I do hope that you'll pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Stafford, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would hope that we would support this bill, and piggybacking on the senator from Loudoun, this issue, and there are 5 of us in here, I think, that represent Prince William County, it created quite of a stir. It was a gentleman who was called to naval service, I believe he's a captain, pretty high ranking in the Navy, and this whole issue became fairly convoluted because of the statute, because maybe a little bit of partisanship. And I think at the end of the day, what this does is it clarifies the process a little bit, might take a little bit of the partisanship out of this, which was really good when we've got reservists who are serving in public office, and it just makes it easier. So I hope we'll support it.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Would the senior senator from Loudoun yield for question?
Would the senior senator from Loudoun yield?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
In the mode that the bill is in now as a result of the senator from Bedford's amendment, what in that bill, can't he do, that same person, do what is currently prescribed in this bill?
The senior senator.
I would respond by saying that what it does, he can recommend, and in fact, in this case, he did. However, what it does is it requires that the board express its views on why they have rejected those individuals, and then they can select someone else. But it requires them, instead of just blowing it off and saying, okay, we don't care about this, it sets up a mechanism where they have to give due consideration. That's all that it does, is it compels them to actually take action on those recommendations and approve them or disapprove them. They can do whichever they want. But I think it just makes it more meaningful, and that really is the difference.
Speak to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Essentially, what we're doing is and I pulled my 2 years on active duty just like everybody else in my generation. But I haven't asked for 1 million exemptions from what we do. And think back of all the things that we've done. I mean, real estate tax exemptions for them, real estate tax exemptions for the widow, free tuition, lower tuition, this. I mean, the list is endless, okay? Now you're going to say that if somebody who has a job, let's suppose that job is a civilian job, but requires them to go to particularly dangerous areas, maybe even more so than the guy who's been activated for several months, a year, 6 months, a year. He can't do this. I mean, he can do this. He can submit the names, but in his situation or her situation, the school board doesn't have to issue any rationale. Only if you happen to be a uniformed service person, they have to do that. Trust me, if this bill fails, Western civilization will still exist. The armed forces still will have no problem recruiting members, and this is simply something that we don't need. And this is a bill that should never see active duty.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, rising to speak to bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I opposed this bill in the committee because I thought that by limiting it to individuals who were suggested by the person who was going on active duty, that was not appropriate. I think with the amendment from the senator from Bedford, I think it now is an appropriate thing. And I think if this had been if this law had been in effect at the time the situation arose in Prince William County, it would have gone a lot more smoothly than it did in reality here. In the end, this is what they came to. And actually, my impression is that the guy who's the temporary person is doing a fine job and representing the constituents. But I think what it does is it creates an expectation that you will at least first look to the people who are suggested by the person who's going to be out for a little while, but you're not locked into those. And I think this actually is a good measure.
The senior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a final comment. I know you can say that There are a whole lot of other people who have other things to do and so forth. But I got to tell you, I'm occasionally over at Walter Reed Bethesda Hospital, and every time I walk in, there is some young, vibrant guy who is in a wheelchair and his legs are gone, or his arms are gone, or he is blinded. And there is a difference, and it's significant, and I hope that we take that into account.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1490 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. The bill passes.
House Bill 2220, a bill relating to alcoholic beverage control, limited mixed beverage license for retail cigar shops.
Mr. President, can that bill go by for the day?
Without objection, thank you, Senator. House Bill 2220 will go by for the day.
House Bill 1587, a bill relating to the Uniform Statewide Building Code, security of certain records. Reported for the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. This is a and speaking of the bill, this is a FOIA bill. It provides that information contained in engineering and construction drawings and plans for any single-family residential dwelling be submitted for the purpose of complying with the building code and the fire code shall be confidential and shall not be subject to disclosure under the FOIA Act.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1587 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The bill passes.
House Bill 1734, a bill relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, guidance documents of the Virginia Parole Board. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill,
the senator has the floor.
This is another FOIA bill. It requires the guidance documents of the Virginia Parole Board to be available to the public records under FOIA.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1734 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The bill passes.
House Bill 1753, a bill to prohibit certain local government practices that would require contractors to provide compensation or benefits beyond those required under state or federal law. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill, this is the prevailing wage bill for local government. If you liked the bill on the state level last week, then you'll love this one, and I encourage you to vote for it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1753 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 20.
Ayes 20, noes 20. The chair votes no. The bill does not pass.
House Bill 2000.
Mr. President.
The senator from Roanoke County.
Having been recorded as a no vote on the vote in which we failed to pass HB 1753, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which House Bill 1753 was defeated be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Mecklenburg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having previously been described, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 1753 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes.
House Bill 2000, a bill relating to sanctuary policies, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendment.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The senator from Franklin County.
Mr. President, I now move that House Bill 2000 pass. And speaking to that bill.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, House Bill 2000, which was the last bill to come out of local governments, is basically a sanctuary city bill. On the amendment, I will walk you through what we struck. But basically, this bill says no locality shall adopt any ordinance, procedure, or policy that restricts the enforcement of federal immigration laws. That's where the bill ends. From there, we put a period in and then struck to less than the full extent permitted by federal law. So basically, Mr. President, what this bill says is that what we already do, which is to enforce the law, that the localities must enforce that law when it comes to immigration law at the federal level. So for those reasons, Mr. President, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
I urge that the body vote against this bill. It interjects a level of confusion that our local governments are saying they really don't need. As you can see in line 11, it says no locality shall adopt any ordinance, procedure, or policy. That is very unclear. Our local police want to continue to make our communities and our neighborhoods safe. They know the difference between the federal law and local laws. They don't need this confusion, and I ask the body to vote no.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
I also urge that we reject this bill. The code is a way that we communicate with the citizens of Virginia. And I think what we've done here is create a bill that really doesn't do much. I don't think anybody is contemplating interfering with the federal government. But as it gets interpreted from parents to children and what have you, I think all we've successfully done here is create an instrument that could frighten young children. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a bad message, and I would urge us to reject the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I represent a district that's a pretty diverse place. I think last time I looked at the U.S. Census, 30% of my constituents were born in another country. And this bill, albeit if you read it legally, I'm not really clear how far it goes, it sends a pretty clear message. And that's a message that we're hearing a lot right now coming from a certain house across the river from my district. And a lot of people are hearing that message, and they're terrified. I just was watching the TV this morning about an executive order that came out this morning, which said that our president is going to hire 10,000 new ICE agents and another 5,000 border guards, and that they intend to deputize local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. You couple that with this bill, it could have a lot of unknown consequences, which we don't, I think, even begin to comprehend. About 2 weeks ago, there was a dance in my high school, and my daughter had some of her friends over to have pizza before they went, and one of her friends was from Central America. About 24 hours before that, ICE raided a church in my district. They didn't go in the church. They stood outside of a hypothermia shelter, and then they waited for people to come out of this church hypothermia shelter to ask them if they had seen somebody. And lo and behold, it turns out that some of those people didn't have the right papers. They, by the way, arrested a American, arrested a veteran, and held him for a while until they figured out he was legal. And then they ended up taking a bunch of others, threw them in a van with 10 other guys, and hauled them off to who knows where. I explained this to this girl who was in my kitchen, and she started to cry. I didn't mean to scare her, but she started to cry. This is how children in my district field today. I had a town hall meeting the next day. I think I mentioned it earlier. About 200 people showed up to my town hall meeting. A second grade teacher stood up in the back and said, we have to deal with this fear these kinds of things generate in school every day. We have to deal with these children coming in crying their parents and their uncles and their aunts are going to be taken away because of these noises that they're hearing. Noises that mainly come out of D.C., but they're starting to come from around here as well. And we don't need to be getting in the middle of this. People at this town hall were in fear of coming out of their house. There were people saying, I had people from their churches worried that ICE was going to stake out a couple of Catholic churches in my district to see who they could talk to walking out the door as soon as church let out because of what's going on. And this bill sends the message that we're going to get right on board with that policy, that we're going to get right on board picking on people who aren't from around here and haul them back to wherever they came from. Mr. President, that's the policy that I don't think, personally, I don't think it's American. I also don't think it's Virginian, and I'll tell you why. You know, last spring, after we got out of session, my wife wanted to go to Bavaria, to Germany. And she wanted to show our kids all these castles and all this medieval stuff they have there. So we went to Germany. While we were driving around through Germany, a couple of the places we went were these old palaces that used to be run by the Catholic bishops that used to govern Germany back in the early 18th century. And I was reading some of the displays, and it talked about how in the early 1700s, the Germans, the governing Catholic Church, decided to purge all the Protestants out of Germany. And I started to think about that because, as you all know, I've mentioned, I have kind of a confused background. I'm half redneck and half Jew. And my Virginia side, the Virginia side of my family, my great-grandmother was named Ayler. And the Ayler family hails from Madison County. They come from a colony originally called the Germanic Colony. You may have heard of Germanic Community College, which is named after it. And those Germans that settled near Culpeper in Madison County, they came over to the United States, guess when? In the early 1700s. Guess why? Because they were the wrong kind of Christians where they came from. And so they came here. And when they came here, you know, Virginia was not a Baptist colony. It was, in fact, run by the Episcopal Church. This General Assembly ran the Episcopal Church, the Church of England. That was the official state church. And then we adopted, when we became independent in 1776, we declared we were going to have a religious test here because we stood for religious diversity, because we stood as a place, as a beacon for people to come over here and live their life and practice their faith however they felt like it. And bills like this, I think, run counter to our values. They run counter to the reasons why this state was founded. They send a horrible message. I think they send an anti-business message, which I think a lot of us care about, that we're not welcoming to people from other countries, that we don't want them here. And, Mr. President, I think it's a bill we ought to vote down.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Mr. President, if no one else wants to speak, I'll speak to it. If there are others in the queue, you can ask them first, and I'll come back to it.
Thank you for that courtesy, Senator. The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, speaking against this bill,
Senator has the floor.
We've dealt with this before. Looking at this very carefully, it says no locality shall basically do anything that restricts enforcement of federal immigration laws. It's limited to immigration laws to less than the extent permitted by federal law. Mr. President, this really turns upside down our federal system of government. Have you thought about that? This is anti-federalism for those of you that have been promoting federalism. When I was United States Attorney for the Western District of Virginia, we had a lot of cooperative joint investigations. Not a lot, but on occasions. Local, state, federal law enforcement officers engaged in pursuit of certain investigations. That was always done cooperatively, voluntarily. The federal government doesn't have any authority to force the state and local authorities to do the federal government's job. And in fact, in the field of immigration, it's exclusively and solely the responsibility and authority of the federal government to enforce the immigration laws. It's not a state issue. It's not a local issue. What this bill does is basically say the state is saying to localities, you have to enforce federal law if it's permitted by federal law. You have to do it. And there are many reasons why the local state authorities would not want to do that. One is economy. Where's the money coming from? Who's paying for this? Out of the state coffers? We're going to have some more budget amendments to make sure our law enforcement authorities have more money to enforce federal law. You know, right now we're having trouble making sure the state police are getting paid properly and so forth. We don't have any extra money to do that. And as you talk to the local state, the state and local authorities, the local police officers, for example, police chiefs, they'll tell you they don't have the resources to do this kind of job. So that's one issue, economy. The second issue is there are compelling reasons why this local police chiefs do not want to enforce federal immigration laws. They have a duty to maintain the protection of the citizens in their communities. They have the duty to maintain law and order, to maintain cooperation on the part of the people in the community to enforce law and order. They need people to help them. The police cannot enforce the law unless the citizens cooperate. And you go into some of the immigrant communities in particular where there are a large number of immigrants, and if they think the local authorities are there as, in effect, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials, to find out who's illegal and deport them, they're not going to cooperate. That's a fact. Talk to any chief of police or any police officer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, they'll tell you the same thing. We don't have the resources to do it, and furthermore, it's counterproductive. It keeps us from enforcing the law in the communities, especially immigrant communities where a lot of New Virginians come from other parts of the world. If they think we're there to find out who's not undocumented and have them deported, they'll clam up. They won't cooperate. We know that as a fact. This bill is counterproductive, Mr. President. I know it sends a message in some quarters, which I think is unfortunate in Virginia. But, Mr. President, this bill is a bad bill. We should defeat it, and we should send the message that Virginia is welcoming. But not only that, we should send a message that we want to make sure our job at the state and local level in terms of enforcing the laws is protected. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, not being a lawyer, and I know that many of us in here are non-lawyers, don't get into that little gray area of the law, and this is one of those simple bills, the one-sentence bill, that basically prohibits localities from setting up a sanctuary location within that city for anyone who's violating immigration laws. You know, we're a nation of laws. I said this in committee, and we abide within those laws. And basically what this bill is doing is saying to the localities, you're not going to set up a sanctuary to prohibit the federal government from coming in and enforcing the federal immigration laws. And it would be no different than the fact that we have laws against stealing and shoplifting, but people do it because they're hungry sometimes. They do it because they're cold and need clothing to clothe themselves or their children. Are we going to allow sanctuaries to be set up to protect people from doing those things? What we're trying to do, what this bill is trying to do, is say to those localities that you're not going to set a sanctuary up to prohibit the enforcement of those federal laws that prohibit the illegal act of coming here. If they're coming here legally, I hear the thing that if we pass this, we're going to scare the young people to death and all this. Well, if it is a legal act, there's nothing to fear. One of the things that I taught my kids over and over is the best way to stay out of trouble is don't get into trouble. And, it's just beyond me to hear the arguments that this bill is going to bestow fear on everyone. These are not intended for people who are going through the legal process. And I would hope that we would just see the simplicity of what this bill does, and that we would actually vote to pass the bill, that we don't set up sanctuaries that are going to protect people who are committing illegal acts. And that is basically what this bill does, and I hope that we pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Mr. President, speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had not initially planned to speak on this bill, but after hearing fellow senators on the other side of the aisle, I think this bill has been mischaracterized. This bill is about the rule of law. If there are laws, they have to be enforced. If there are federal laws, the localities do not get to choose which federal laws they will enforce. If there are state laws, the localities do not get to choose which state laws they will enforce. This bill addresses some false perceptions that are being created not just across the Commonwealth, but across the country. Some cities are saying to illegal immigrants, people who are here illegally, people who are subject to being deported, come to our city and you will be protected. We will not enforce these laws. They are not being protected because the federal government still has the right to enforce immigration laws. They have the duty to enforce immigration laws. It is their responsibility to enforce our borders. And if the current administration is going to enforce our laws and enforce our borders, it doesn't matter which city the people who are here illegally go to, they are subject to those laws. This law, this bill, this one sentence bill simply states localities do not override the federal government, and I support this bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Throughout the history of our country, we've seen laws come and go. We've seen them change. We've seen as the needs of society, as the requirements of society changed, we've seen laws change. We've seen them come on and off the books. But until the last number of recent years, one thing we haven't seen that we're seeing today in society is a group of people who don't want to follow the laws. A significant group of people, Mr. President. And we don't get to pick and choose what laws that we want to follow in this country. This is a nation of law, of rule, and of order. We've had our law enforcement officers lay down their blood and lay down their lives for our laws in this country. We dishonor them when we talk about not following the laws of this country. And when we do get to the point where significant numbers of people are picking and choosing whether or not they want to follow the laws of this country, then the very civilization of this country is weakened and begins to crumble. And we've seen, again, throughout the history of the world, civilizations crumble and topple as a result of a lack of respect for the laws of those countries. So until somebody changes the laws of this country, I'm going to very strongly speak to people every chance I get about following those laws, because I believe in the rule of law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I understand that immigration law is something that this Commonwealth and this country has been struggling with for over 400 years, when the first settlers here came illegally to settle at Jamestown. We don't need a state law telling our localities that they can't impede federal law. We already have one. It's called the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution of the United States. in our federal system of government, the federal government has preempted immigration because it is part of the federal power of diplomacy in dealing with foreign governments. This is not just about the rule of law. This is a message bill. Whether it is intended to send a message or not, it sends a message and has to be viewed in a larger context of what is happening in this country today. And you've heard part of it. There are people here in this country legally who came legally, but their visa might have expired. They've applied for a new one, but it hasn't come through yet. There are also people who were born here legally, but their ancestors might have come from another country legally. And what is happening today is both American citizens and people who might be here undocumented are all being caught up in ICE raids to the point, this bill was brought as a public safety measure. It is having the opposite effect. When an ICE agent walks into a courthouse to detain a woman who is there trying to escape her abuser to get a protective order, and her abuser calls ICE agents to go pick her up, this sends a message to everyone who looks like they might not be of an Anglo-Saxon background. Whether they were born here or not, it sends a message, you might be rounded up. And that's okay. That's what this bill says, whether we intend it or not. Because it's not necessary. We heard in committee, there are no sanctuary cities in Virginia. There are no cities trying to be sanctuary cities. There are cities, and the city of Richmond is one of them, that has said it is more important to us to have community policing where the police will go out and talk to victims and witnesses of crimes and not ask about their immigration status, and will choose not to voluntarily enter into an ICE 287G agreement, which they're not required under federal law to do. Now, that is something that some of our localities are doing because they have found it is more productive for them to fight crime if people are willing to talk to them. And there are a lot of people, yes, children and adults, who are terrified. Again, some of them born here, some of them American citizens, who are terrified to talk to anybody in government, in the police department, because they don't know what the consequences of that will be. And that is why we should not pass this bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of reflecting back at the last 8 years up in Washington, D.C. And I've seen all kinds of combinations. I've seen Republican House, Democrat President, Democrat Senate. I've seen Democrat Senate, Democrat House, Democrat President. I've seen both houses, Republican and a Democrat President. I've seen it all. Never once did I ever see a law passed that changed the immigration laws of this country. Never once. And I don't think anyone in Washington felt like our borders ought to be wide open to anybody who wants to come in without any control. I think everybody in Washington obviously must have supported the idea that you come into this country legally or you shouldn't come into this country at all. Otherwise, I think the law would have changed, but it never did change. So when I hear these arguments like somehow we're not going to enforce the law, somehow a law that neither political party seemed ready to change, to keep into process, that we're not going to change the law, then clearly the law is enforced. If the law is not enforced, then why have the law to begin with? And so I'm struck a little bit by the fact that we're actually going to enforce the laws that are passed in Congress, that are legal, that all of a sudden have created this outrage that we're not going to enforce the law. And all this bill does, as I understand this bill, is just say you can't set up a city that says we're going to set up a city specifically to go up against the federal law, which seems pretty obvious to me that we shouldn't have to have a bill like this, but obviously we need a bill like this just to make it clear to some localities that we're not going to do this. And I'm also struck by the fact that if you look, and I'm not trying to pick on one country or another, but I just had a process, just kind of Googled, what if I'm in Mexico illegally? If I'm an illegal immigrant in Mexico? It's a felony and it's a 2-year punishable in prison. After you serve your sentence and you come back in and you try to come back into the country and get caught, it's a 10-year sentence. If you extend your visa in Mexico beyond your visa date, it's a felony. If you aid and abet an illegal immigrant in Mexico, it's also a crime. So I would submit to you that while some may portray what we do in this country as harsh, or someone may portray that actually trying to enforce the law is somehow harsh, that in fact I suspect Mexico is not separate in the way that it treats. I suspect if I started Googling other countries, I'd find some similar type measure there. So all we're asking here, I think, is come into this country legally, or please don't come in at all. Now, should laws be changed? Should we open up guest worker programs? Should we do those things in Washington? Personally, I feel we do. As long as we know who's coming in and who's a guest worker and when they go home, I think that's altogether appropriate. I think there's a number of measures Washington can take but have failed to take to this date to move it forward. And so I think there's a process that needs to be done in Washington. We can't do a thing about it here in Richmond, but I would hope we'd support this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Brought to you by Wagner for governor. I don't know if that's your title, the junior senator from Richmond. She was exactly right in every single thing that she said. It's interesting that all the people who've spoken in favor of this bill, none of them come from a municipality that's agreed to enter into an agreement with ICE on 287G. That's the enforcement. So in theory, with the exception of anybody here from Prince William County, Senator McPike, with the exception of Senator McPike, everybody else lives in a sanctuary county and a sanctuary city and a sanctuary town. And I don't see, not a single one of you all who've spoken in support of this bill, why don't you, if it's such a good idea, what you need to do is to get your local government to contact the Immigration and Customs and Enforcement and tell them that you want to be part of the 287G program. It's called putting your money where your mouth is, okay? Senator McClellan was exactly right. This is a message bill. Sends a terrible message, but let me essentially tell you how effective messages are. Used to be a Hollywood producer. His name was Samuel Goldwyn. He was one of the founders of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for you younger people in here. And Sam Goldwyn made a lot of very fabulous, yeah, he did make a lot of money. He produced a tremendous amount of those MGM musicals that you saw, or that some of you have seen, in the 40s and 50s. And people would say to him, Sam, your movies are great, but they don't have a message. You know what Goldwyn used to tell him? You want to send a message? Go see Western Union. That's about how effective this bill would be. I doubt if there's a single municipality in this state that, as a result of this bill, is going to call the Immigration and Customs and Enforcement and say, how do we join your program? And by the way, Prince William had some problems with that. Guess what? ICE wasn't coming to pick these people up. And they told them, we're not interested in picking up people, who ran a red light. That's not what we're about. So we're sending a message, it's a pretty lousy one, But as effectiveness, big goose egg. Big goose egg. By the way, we had a problem similar to this back around from around 37 through 40. Some people from Europe, quite a few of them, tried to get into this country. FDR blocked it. Okay? He blocked it. Told them, go back where you came from. They did. I saw what happened to them when I visited Auschwitz last summer. Okay? That's why a lot of these people leave these places and they come here. And they come here looking for a break. And you might take a look at where a lot of the Nobel Prize winners of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s came from. They were immigrants. And some of them didn't quite, some of them had a lot of trouble getting here. And by the way, we didn't have any immigration laws in this country until 1922, other than, I think, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1980, because we were using them as slaves to build the coast-to-coast railroads. So we've not benefited one bit by turning people away from these other countries who are coming here to get away from potential death as a result of who's running those countries. You notice they're not coming here from Canada. They're coming here from basically these countries that are totally undemocratic and lawless. So, when you do these kinds of things, you don't send a very good message. Also, from a political standpoint, you're making a future demographic group of this country awful upset. And just from a political standpoint, I'll tell you, it's not a wise thing to do. So you can vote for this bill, and you can go back and tell people I'm tough on illegal immigration, okay? But I don't think a single one of you in here is, unless you can convince your local governments to enter into that 287G with Immigration Customs Enforcement. And by the way, the only one so far in this state is Prince William County. Not Henrico, not Lynchburg, not any of these other places. No, not yet. 38 other municipalities, if that article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch was accurate the other day, only 38 other municipalities in America belong to that, are part of the 287G program. So don't give me this how we're going to get tough on immigration. We're not going to do anything by this bill other than send a bad message, a weak one, but a bad one. I'll answer your question now.
Mr. Senator
President,
from Rockingham.
All I wanted to ask was whether the senior senator from Fairfax overlooked perhaps the fact that Rockingham and Shenandoah counties are members of 287G.
Though that must be new because they weren't as of last year.
As of 2007, they have been.
I stand corrected. I stand corrected. And if anybody else's county's in it, I'd like to know it. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStep.
Mr. President, speaking in support of the bill, and I just want to clarify for the senior senator from Fairfax that Rockingham, Shenandoah, and 6 other departments in the state of Virginia are involved with the program and have been since 2007.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's good news. That means I'm the last one to speak on this bill. Hopefully. Unless I create some questions. Mr. President, this bill is a simple statement of what we should be doing in terms of the Supremacy Clause. The junior senator from Richmond is exactly right. Imagine for yourself if cities throughout the United States or any city in Virginia would have said, we're going to become a sanctuary for anyone that wants to discriminate in violation of federal law. We're going to protect you from that federal law against anti-discrimination. What would we do? What would we all do? Because it's the law, an important law. And there's a reason for that law. The immigration laws are laws that have been on our books for quite some time. Perhaps in the last 8 years they have been selectively enforced. Perhaps for humanitarian reasons, perhaps for political reasons. But all laws must be applied equally. And all areas and regions of the Commonwealth of Virginia must treat all people, citizens, non-citizens alike, in the same manner in respect of the law. I'm reminded of, and not to throw back into history like the senior senator from Fairfax likes to do on occasion, but if you remember in the 60s, there was the TV show that I grew up on, Sonny and Cher. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. President, Sonny Bono, after his career on TV and as the group Sonny and Cher broke up and his marriage broke up, he later ran for Congress in California, surprisingly as a Republican. And he was in a debate, and the moderator asked him, Mr. Bono, what are your views regarding illegal immigration? And in classic Sonny Bono fashion, he said, well, it's illegal. And that's exactly right. It's against the law. And I think when you create these sanctuary cities, it's really not the people that are there that are trying to make something of themselves. A lot of times it's those that seek to do others harm, that have come across our borders not legally and harm not only those citizens of the United States, but even those who are not citizens of the United States. My fellow members of the local government committee remember a story I told about one of my own clients who was an illegal immigrant. Hard worker, great guy, great family, children born in the United States. The drug cartels came over, killed one of his family members, threatened his other family members, and said, you must do what we say or we will kill your family. And so he did. And he is now in federal prison awaiting deportation. It is not so much him that I do not want in this country. It is the person that kills others, threatens others, and makes good people do bad things, or does bad things to good people. I'm reminded, Mr. President, of just even an article that came out on February 22nd. I think we all watch the news enough, but I will remind you once again. An illegal alien who was set free by a sanctuary city and never deported is now charged with killing a man just weeks after his release. Ever Valles, 19, murdered Timothy Cruz, age 32, on February 7th. After robbing him at a train station, he had been released by the Denver Sheriff Department just 6 weeks before that, after posting a $5,000 bond on the charges of grand theft. Denver, a sanctuary city, had released Valles, even though U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents had asked repeatedly the city to hold him. In fact, ICE had flagged Valles as an immigration priority given his ties to gang activity in the city, and asked to be told before any attempt to release him so that they could arrest them themselves. The ICE officials say the city failed to keep its deal. The detainer we had placed on this gentleman was not honored, and he was released by the jail without any prior notification. Valles was a known gang member whose gang history was documented even in the local state of Colorado database, the agency said. So, today, the family of Timothy Cruz mourns the loss of their son. One person, you may say. But, Mr. President, the death of one person at the hand of someone who should not be here and who would do others harm is one death too many. That's why this bill makes sense. Let us not become Denver. Let us not have a Denver. And for the love of all things good, let us not have a family of a Timothy Cruz who is no longer on this planet for no other reason than he was at a train station waiting to get a train when his life was taken by someone who should have been detained and should have not been in this country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2000 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 20.
Ayes 20, noes 20. The chair votes no. The bill does not pass.
House Bill 2245.
The senator from James City County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side by which the bill did not pass, I'd ask we reconsider that vote.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which House Bill 2000 did not pass be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Franklin County.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the reasons previously expressed by myself and almost everybody else in this room, I now move for the passage of HB 2000.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2000 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes.
House Bill 2245, a bill relating to the Virginia Research Investment Committee, reported from Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the bill,
the senator has the floor.
This bill is identical to Senate Bill 1371 offered by the senior senator from Fairfax. It expands the role of Virginia Research Investment Committee to include, in addition to awarding grants and loans from Virginia Research Investment Fund, providing grants and coordination in the use of public funds to support research and commercialization efforts. The bill moves responsibility of the development from CIT to SHEV.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2245 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The bill passes.
House Bill 2360, a bill relating to the Virginia Information Technologies Agency procurement of information technology, compliance with federal laws and regulations pertaining to information security and privacy, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that motion,
the senator has the floor.
This bill requires that the Chief Information Officer of VITA to develop policies and standards and guidelines that are in compliance with federal law and regulations pertaining to security and privacy.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2360 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The bill passes.
House Bill 2394, a bill relating to pawnbrokers' allowable late fees, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology.
The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that motion,
the senator has the floor.
This provides that pawnbrokers may charge a late fee not to exceed 10% of the amount loaned for each item that is not claimed by the pledged due date. Current law allows no late charges and therefore no incentive to pick up the items when they are that ties up the money of the pawnbroker.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2394 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 20.
Ayes 20, noes 20. The chair votes no. The bill does not pass.
Mr. President.
The senator from Franklin County.
Having my right index finger, having voted on the the prevailing side of HB 2394, by which the bill passed, I now move its reconsideration. Didn't pass. Failed to pass.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
The question is, shall the vote by which House Bill 2394 did not pass be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 1.
Ayes 38, noes 1. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Mecklenburg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will renew the motion to pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall House Bill 2394 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 20.
Ayes 20, noes 20. The chair votes no. The bill does not pass.
Regular calendar House Joint Resolution on third reading. House Joint Resolution 693, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 10 a section numbered 7-B relating to special funds for transportation purposes. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with amendments, and there is one floor amendment.
The senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. Your amendment's not in conflict, so we're going to do this one first. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. The senator from Fairfax City.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. The senator from Fairfax City.
And, Mr. President, I would move acceptance of the floor amendment and speak to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is what we call the double lockbox in this floor amendment. We have a constitutional amendment in front of us that deals with not diverting transportation funds from the Transportation Trust Fund to use for general fund purposes. That's happened a couple times, or I think it may at least 2 times since I've been in the legislature. And the bottom line is, if it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. So if we're not going to take money out of Transportation Trust Fund and spend it for education, then we shouldn't take education funds and spend it for transportation. So basically, the way I've drafted this amendment, it would say that general funds would not be used for transportation except to retire bonded indebtedness for which we've pledged our full faith and credit. This is text that you've probably previously seen if you were in this body. I think 6 or 8 years ago we had this, and I believe we passed this concept. So again, this simply says if we're going to keep our funds sacrosanct for transportation, we do the same for education, and therefore it is the double lockbox, and I move that you agree to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Can this bill go by for the day, please?
Without objection, H.R. 693 will go by for the day.
Memorial resolutions.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully move that all the memorial resolutions on pages 43 through 49 of the calendar, including House Joint Resolution 867 through Senate Resolution 153, be agreed to in the block in the usual manner, waiving the reading of the resolution. Any senator who desires to remove a memorial resolution from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the title of that resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the memorial resolutions on pages 43 through 49, HJR 867 through SR 153 be considered in the block in the usual manner, waiving the reading of the resolutions thereof, with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The resolutions are before us in the block. The clerk will please read the titles of the memorial resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 867,
the senator
celebrating
from
the life of the Honorable Charles J. Colgan.
The senator from Prince William County.
Mr. President, can HJR 867 come out of the block?
Without objection, HR 867 will come out of the block.
House Joint Resolution 892, celebrating the life of Homer Constantine Elides. House Joint Resolution 905, celebrating the life of the Reverend Juan Sang Lee. House Joint Resolution 913, celebrating the life of Ruth Friedenthal Cantor. House Joint Resolution 915, celebrating the life of Roger Dirk Vanderheer. House Joint Resolution 932, celebrating the life of Richard W. Glover.
Mr. President.
The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you. Could HJR 932 come out of the block, please?
Without objection, H.R. 932 will come out of the block.
House Joint Resolution 933, celebrating the life of Nicole K. Mittendorf. House Joint Resolution 938, celebrating the life of Ralph McKinley Dilloy, Jr. House Joint Resolution 939, celebrating the life of William Henry Anderson, Jr. House Joint Resolution 940, celebrating the life of Margaret Marie Temple Butler. House Joint Resolution 941, celebrating the life of Willis Jackson Dunn. House Joint Resolution 942, celebrating the life of Senior Chief Special Warfare Operator William Ryan Owens. House Joint Resolution 943, celebrating the life of Ashley Nicole Langham. House Joint Resolution 944, commemorating the life and legacy of Desmond T. Doss. House Joint Resolution 945, celebrating the life of Suzanne Gronowski. House Joint Resolution 966, celebrating the life of Stephen Michael Logan. House Joint Resolution 970, celebrating the life of William G. O'Brien. House Joint Resolution 974, celebrating the life of Senior Chief Petty Officer Scott C. Dayton. House Joint Resolution 978, celebrating the life of Robert Allen Phillips. House Joint Resolution 979, celebrating the life of O. Linwood Byerly. House Joint Resolution 990, celebrating the life of Holly Marie Kerr Edwards. House Joint Resolution 991, celebrating the life of William Harrell Lucy. House Joint Resolution 992, celebrating the life of Ruhala K. Ramazani. House Joint Resolution 993, celebrating the life of Pierre Paul Sonyi, Jr. House Joint Resolution 994, celebrating the life of James Gordon Simmons. House Joint Resolution 1001, celebrating the life of Young Suk Love. House Joint Resolution 1004, celebrating the life of Andrew Fred Singleton. House Joint Resolution 1005, celebrating the life of Joseph Tate Hart. House Joint Resolution 1006, celebrating the life of Richard Gaither Dick. House Joint Resolution 1007, celebrating the life of Henry Clay Bibbs II. House Joint Resolution 1008, celebrating the life of Laverne Charmaine Bird Smith. House Joint Resolution 1009, celebrating the life and legacy of Captain Humbert Roque Versace. House Joint Resolution 1010, celebrating the life of James A. Rich, Jr. House Joint Resolution 1027, celebrating the life of John Harvey Gibbons, Jr. House Joint Resolution 1028, celebrating the life of the Honorable Thomas Graham Baker, Jr.
The senior senator from Bath.
Mr. President, I'd request that this be removed from the block, please.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, H.R. 1028 will come out of the block.
Senate Joint Resolution 404, celebrating the life of the Reverend Won Sang Lee. Senate Joint Resolution 415, celebrating the life of Marshall Lee Garst. Senate Joint Resolution 417, celebrating the life of Lewis Edward McKinney. Senate Joint Resolution 419, celebrating the life of Richard Lee Munden. Senate Joint Resolution 420, celebrating the life of Robert James Costin. Senate Joint Resolution 421, celebrating the lives of Ross A. Alamadine, Christopher James Bishop, Brian Roy Bloom, Ryan Christopher Clark, Austin Michelle Cloud, Jocelyn Couture Narvek, Kevin B. Granada, Matthew Gregory Gwaltney, Caitlin Miller Hammerin, Jeremy Michael Herbstritt, Rachel Elizabeth Hill, Emily Jane Hilscher, Jarrett Lee Lane, Michael Joseph Laporte, Henry J. Lee, LaView Lubruski, G.V. Logantham, Partahay Memora Halamain, Lumber Torum, Lauren Ashley McCain, Daniel Patrick O'Neill, Juan Ramon Ortez, Manal Hirilal Panchal, Daniel Alejandro Perez, Aaron Nicole Peterson, Michael Stephen Polay Jr., Julia Kathleen Pride, Mary Karen Reed, Rima Joseph Samaha, Waleed Muhammad Shalaleen, Leslie Geraldine Sherman, Maxine Shelley Turner, and Nicole Regina White. Senate Joint Resolution 422, celebrating the life of W. Alvin Hudson, Jr. Senate Joint Resolution 426, celebrating the life of Ivor Noel Hume.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
You could take Senate Joint Resolution 426 out of the block and pass it by for the day, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, SJR 426 will come out of the block and by for the day.
Senate Joint Resolution 430, celebrating the life of Melvin Glenn Anglin. Senate Joint Resolution 434, celebrating the life of Charlotte Ann Nurge. Senate Joint Resolution 435, celebrating the life of Alfred C. Anderson. Senate Joint Resolution 436, celebrating the life of James David Seneff.
Mr. President.
The senator from Roanoke County.
Thank you. Can SJ 435 come out of the block and by for the day, please?
Without objection, SJR 435 will come out of the block and by for the day.
Senate Joint Resolution 446, celebrating the life of Senior Chief Special Warfare Operator William Ryan Owens. Senate Resolution 143, celebrating the life of Richard W. Glover. Senate Resolution 151, celebrating the life of H. Stewart Dunn. Senate Resolution 153, commemorating...
Let the clerk finish, please.
Apologize.
Senate Resolution 153, commemorating the life and legacy of Private First Class Gary W. Martini, United States Marine Corps.
The senior senator.
Could that come out of the block, please?
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, Senate Resolution 153 will come out of the block.
Mr. President.
The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask that two of the resolutions come out of the block. On page 44, HJR 942, and on page 45, HJR 974. Those come out of the block and by for the day, please.
Thank you, Senator. With the exceptions of Memorial Resolutions 867, 932, 1028, 426, 435, 153, 942, and 974, the resolutions will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of agreeing to the memorial resolutions will please rise. The resolutions are agreed to. Returning to page 43, HJR 867, the senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move HJR 867 and ask that the body agree to the resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The resolution will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of the resolution will please rise. The resolution is agreed to. On page 44, HJR 932, the senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And briefly, I just wanted to say Mr. Dick Glover was the longest-serving member of the Henrico County Board of Supervisors. He represented the Brooklyn District and was a ferocious, lifelong advocate for that district in Henrico County and leaves an incredible legacy behind him. And thank you for your indulgence in letting me recognize this incredible man who I had the honor to call a friend.
Thank you, Senator. The resolution will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of agreeing to the resolution will please rise. The resolution is agreed to. On page 47, HJR 1028, the senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, Tommy Baker was a delegate from Radford who sat on the other side of the aisle. He was a law and order tough guy, but also a very smart guy and with a very big heart and a dry sense of humor. We don't see his kind around this building very much anymore. I move the resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The resolution will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of agreeing to the resolution will please rise. The resolution is agreed to. On page 49, Senate Resolution 153, the senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the members will indulge me for a few minutes, this resolution commemorating life and legacy of Private First Class Gary Martini honors the 50th anniversary of Gary Martini winning the Medal of Honor. I had the great pleasure great honor of serving in Fox Company 1st Marine Regiment with Gary Martini at the time that he won this. I was a pilot over there and volunteered to serve on the ground as a forward air controller and was then assigned to Fox Company, which was outposted in the Quezon Valley, far out of reinforcing range of any other American forces. And we were surrounded by a division of North Vietnamese elite forces and a division of Main Force Viet Cong. And for several months, we would go down through lanes that were cut through the minefields down from our ridge line, and we would go off deep into enemy territory, generally in the dark of the moon, moonless nights, and we would set up ambushes, and then we would fight our way back to the ridge line. It was a tactic that was eventually doomed to failure, and yet it began one of the most dramatic events of the Vietnam War. On April the 21st, Private First Class Martini joined a troop of Fox Company Minus, consisted of about 2 platoons, and they went out and they went to a village called Bin Son. And in Bin Son, there was a reinforced battalion of North Vietnamese regular forces. They were very hardened. They were the elite of the elite. They had dug in and they had prepared because Fox Company had dramatically interfered with the ability of the North Vietnamese to maneuver throughout the valley. And it was time to take them out. And so there was initially a very sharp clash. Fox Company killed quite a number of North Vietnamese troops. And then the Fox Company commander, ordered an attack across an open rice paddy. And they got halfway across the rice paddy, and then they were met by the thunderous roar of the guns from the enemy battalion, and the Marines were cut down in great numbers, and Gary Martini was not one of them, but the field was littered with dead. In a way, it was somewhat like Pickett's charge. So Gary Martini looked out and he slipped across the rice paddy dike. He ran zigzag across the field towards the enemy. He got very close to them, and then he hurled grenades into the enemy lines, killing a number of the North Vietnamese who were there firing on the wounded Marines who remained out in the field. In the course of this, Gary Martini was wounded very seriously. He made his way back to the relative safety of the trench line at the other side of the rice paddy. And from there, he observed as another Marine ran out to save the lives of some of the wounded Marines who lay out there. And when he did, he saw that the other Marine was killed. And notwithstanding that, he ran out, and he, again, wounded as he was, he ran out right in front of the enemy guns, grabbed one of the Marines, dragged him back to safety, and then while he was there, and chaos engulfed the entire battlefield. Everywhere, Fox Company was overwhelmed. And he heard one of his friends, a fellow named Boudreau, PFC Boudreau, he was badly wounded, and he yelled out, he said, "Martini, you got to help me." And Martini couldn't leave his friend to die. And so he ran back out directly under the enemy guns, and he grabbed Boudreau by the belt, and as he did, he was struck again by the enemy fire, and he was mortally wounded, and he fell to the ground, and he dragged Boudreau as he bled his own life's blood on the ground, and he dragged him perhaps 300 feet back to the Marine trenches. Some of the Marines started out to help him, and he said, no, he said, don't come out, you could just get killed. And he dragged Boudreau to safety, and then he fell dead. In the course of this, he had saved the lives of 2 Marines. He had saved others probably by his aggressive action attacking the enemy. He was a fellow from Lexington, Virginia, home of VMI, the burial place of both Lee and Jackson. Tremendous hero. And yet, I get together with Fox Company to this day. We're going to meet April the 21st this coming year. And I have told all of them, I said, you know, there were only 2 of us left, 2 officers left. One was the artillery forward observer, and the other was me, and I was a pilot. I was a helicopter pilot. And we reconstituted the company, and I said, you know, I apologize to everyone because there were any number of Medal of Honor winners there that nobody knows because everybody was killed in that part of the battlefield. But at least he stands as one of the exemplars. And this was a battle that turned out to have been the bloodiest single battle of the Marine Corps in all of the Vietnam War in the 10-year period, because it started that day on April 21st, and it continued for about 7 months in about a 4-mile square. And in the course of this, over 900 Marines were killed, Marines and corpsmen. There were 7 who were awarded the Medal of Honor, all posthumously. So it comes a time to to recognize him, and I thought I would take the opportunity, since he is a son of Virginia, to recognize his sacrifice for our nation. And really, he represents so many others. The battle continued and continued. Here's just one sample of an interview from Lance Corporal Malbouf, who was in another part of the field of battle. He was a machine gunner. He said, I fired across a 180-degree arc, across my entire front. And then all of a sudden, my assistant gunner said the rounds were falling out of the barrel. We had cooked the barrel. The assistant gunner was hit, so I changed the smoking hot barrel with my bare hands. I got hit with a concussion grenade that blew me up into the air and off the gun. I thought I'd bought the farm, but I didn't have any holes. I was trying to take care of Lance Corporal Ernesto Sanchez, who was hit with small arms fire, got a sucking chest wound. He asked if he was going to make it, and I told him he was. And then he died in my arms. Ladies and gentlemen, there's probably no one in this Senate who is more anti-war than I am, and probably none who has a greater heart for the men, for the women, for the people of this nation who are called to fight. And so I would ask that when we adjourn today, that we adjourn in the name of Medal of Honor winner PFC Gary Martini, United States Marine Corps.
Senator, thank you for sharing that story with us. The resolution will be agreed to in the usual manner. All those in favor of agreeing to the resolution will please rise. The resolution is agreed to.
Commending resolutions.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that all of the commending resolutions on pages 50 through 63 of the calendar, including House Joint Resolution 825 through Senate Resolution 155, be agreed to in the block by voice vote, waiving the reading of the resolution. Any senator who desires to remove a commending resolution from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the number of that resolution.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the commending resolutions on pages 50 through 63, HJR 825 through SR 155, be considered in the block by voice vote, waiving the reading of the resolutions with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The resolutions are before us in the block. The clerk will please read the number of the resolutions.
House Joint Resolutions 825, 826, 907, 908, 909, 914, 916, 917, 918, 919, 920, 921, 922, 923, 924, 925, 926, 927, 928, 929, 930, 931, 934, 935, 936, 937, 946, 947, 948, 949, 950, 951, 952, 953, 954, 955, 956, 957, 958, 959, 960, 961, 962, 963, 964, 965, 968, 969, 971, 972, 973, 975, 976, 977, 980, 982, 983, 984, 985, 986, 987, 988, 989, 995, 996, 997, 998, 999, 1000, 1002, 1003,
Mr. President.
The senator from Grayson County.
Can HJR 1002 and 1003 come out of the block and buy for the day?
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, H.R. 1002 and 3 will come out of the block and buy for the day. (1011), 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1018, 1019, 1020, 1021, 1022, 1023, 1024, 1025.
Mr. President,
The senator from Northern Fairfax County, Senator Howe.
can HJR 1025 come out of the block?
Without objection, H.R. 1025 will come out of the block. And buy or just out of the blocks? Thank you, Senator.
1026, 1029, 1030, Senate Joint Resolutions 413, 414, 416, 423, 424, 425, 427, 428, 429, 431, 432, 433, 437, 438, 439, 440, 441, 442, 443, 444, 445, 447, Senate Resolutions 149, 150, 152, 154, 155.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With the exception of H.R. 1002, 1003, and 1025, the question is, shall the resolutions be agreed to? All in favor of agreeing to the resolutions will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolutions are agreed to. On page 60, H.J.R. 1025, the senator from Northern Fairfax County. Did you want to speak to that?
I wasn't planning to speak for it, but I also don't intend to vote for it.
I understand. Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall H.R. 1025 pass? All in favor of agreeing to House Joint Resolution 1025 will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, inquiry of the clerk. Does that complete today's calendar?
We have one conference committee report.
Senate Bill 1180, page 6.
On page 6, Senate Bill 1180. Joint Conference Committee report.
The senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the conference report. And speaking to the measure.
Thank you, Senator. You had the floor.
The conferees agreed to add that the information provided by the prescription monitoring program annually to the Joint Commission on Health Care also be provided to the Senate and House Committees on Health.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate agree to the conference committee report? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Yes, Mr. President. Could we return to the morning hour?
Yes, sir. Senator, you
I rise for a point of personal privilege and a motion.
The senator has the floor.
Today, February 22nd, marks the 285th anniversary of the birth in Westmoreland County of a great son of Virginian, George Washington. The senator from Eastern Fairfax and I have arranged for you to receive the 2017 Mount Vernon calendar and their quarterly magazine, both of which are on your desks today. Last year, I talked a little bit about Washington the Burgess. This year, I'd like to talk about Washington the politician. Elections were quite different back then. In Washington's day, retail politics were frowned upon, and candidates were discouraged from mingling with the voters. It was said, if a man solicits you for your vote, avoid him. Self-interest and sordid avarice lurk under his forced smiles, hearty shakes by the hand, and deceitful inquiries after your wife and family. Only free white male landowners of at least 25 acres could vote, the wealthy elite known as the planters. However, it was also common practice for the candidates to provide alcohol, otherwise known as bumbo, to the voters. And in 1755, the then 23-year-old Washington, a first-time candidate for the House of Burgesses in Frederick County, suffered a landslide defeat, receiving only 40 of the 581 votes cast. This was due in large part to his failure to provide bumbo to the voters. In 1758, Washington ran again and won. During that election, he supplied 28 gallons of rum, 50 gallons of rum punch, 34 gallons of wine, 46 gallons of beer, and 2 gallons of cider, an impressive 160 gallons of liquor to 391 voters. That's more than a quart and a half per voter. Washington had clearly learned his lesson because a key to victory was swilling the planters with bumbo. Now, after his first term, the Burgess ran again, this time from Fairfax County, which he represented from 1761 to 1775. He served on 3 committees, religion and propositions and grievances, and the one I serve on today, privileges and elections. Washington won the friendship and respect of his colleagues and built enduring relationships with Virginia leaders who would later become fellow founding fathers. Of course, he went on to prove himself as a force in the Continental Congress, a general, and our first president. Today, no one has an unkind word to say about the father of our country. But in his day, President Washington was widely criticized in the press. He was accused of having the style of a monarch. It was said at one point that the presidential mansion in New York City was surrounded by innumerable multitudes from day to day, buzzing and cursing the president. The press was a vigilant check on presidential power, just like today. In 1798, after his retirement, Washington installed a whiskey distillery at Mount Vernon, and it was very profitable. The distillery produced 12,000 gallons per year. And in 1799, Washington wrote to his nephew, 200 gallons of whiskey will be ready this day for your call, and the sooner it is taken, the better, as the demand for this article in these parts is brisk. The distillery operates once again today, and with the governor's signature, George Washington's rye whiskey is poised to become the official spirit of the Commonwealth. The story of President Washington is a uniquely American experience. He overcame adversity, he learned lessons, he adapted. We know he rose to become a great general, revered founding father, and our beloved first president. I move that when we adjourn today, we do so in memory of and honor of a great Virginian, President George Washington.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of personal privilege about our first president.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, one of the best things I get to do is speak at Eagle Scout ceremonies for Boy Scouts all over my district. And I always talk about our first president because in 1958, when my father met with Governor Theodore R. McKeldin, Republican governor of Maryland, he was given a book that Governor McKeldin had written. It was called Washington Bowed. And he wrote a beautiful inscription to me about doing good, being good, always trying to do the right thing, and that was the only way to be happy. And I try to pass that message on. But what the message of the book in Washington Bowed was that he was in Philadelphia when the treaty was finally signed with Great Britain to bring the war to a close. It was long after Yorktown. And so he proceeded to the Continental Congress in Annapolis, Maryland. And it was all prearranged. He was to walk into the room. They were to remain seated with their hats on. He was to enter the room with his hat off. Probably the most significant thing that ever occurred for our democracy was this man giving up what could have been a kingship, what could have been emperor, what could have been any number of things, because he owed it to the people to turn over his sword and give up his power, and give up his privilege, and turn this country back to the people. And that very act, I think, is probably the singular most important thing he did, because George Washington knew what to do in victory. He knew what to do when he'd won. Now, one of the other of several people that we honor in this chamber every year is by the gentleman from Stafford is Robert E. Lee. Now, I bring up Robert E. Lee because I think what Robert E. Lee did is also a metaphor for this country and how to live one's life properly. Robert E. Lee, after the war, proceeded back to Richmond, was awaiting to get arrested, never did, but he decided to take the presidency of Washington College and put down many requests to continue the war and take to the woods and keep fighting the fight. Now, he wasn't a perfect man, neither was George Washington, but he knew what to do. In defeat, he knew what to do. He became a leader in restoring a different kind of education to the South. He said, you know, philosophy and languages are fine, but we need engineering. We need to have agriculture taught in our schools, and became a great reformer of education because Robert E. Lee knew what to do in defeat. And I think that's a metaphor for all of us by these two great Virginians, knowing what to do in victory, knowing what to do in defeat. And today I think it's kind of poignant that school that Robert E. Lee took over, Washington College, is now known as Washington and Lee, a place that all of us can be proud is the place where knowing what to do in victory and knowing what to do in defeat will be honored forever. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The Senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Mr. President, I rise for an announcement and a point of personal privilege.
The Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the representative of the 36th District, which includes land of 3 of 5 of General Washington's farms, just want to let anybody know if anybody wants to try any bumbo, I have about 3 or 4 quarts of it in my office. I have 2 quarts of his aged rye whiskey, I think 1 quart of unaged rye whiskey, and 1 quart of General Washington's peach brandy. And it's only about $200 a quart, so it's about $12 a shot. It's under the gift limit. So you can come on by. Be happy to give you a shot if you want to try it out and see why he won his elections. Point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
And we'll be trying that this afternoon. One other thing I just want to say really quick. The Senator from Prince William County had pulled out Chuck Colgan's resolution. And when I was at his service, they had in the program Chuck Colgan's Top 10, which I thought, first heard his son read at the high school dedication for Colgan High School, and I was really struck by when he read it, and I wanted to get a copy. And luckily, they printed it in the program for his service. I'm going to read it really quick because I thought they're really powerful. These were apparently what he would read to tell his 8 children. Number 1, there's no such word as can't. Number 2, a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. Number 3, a smile is like a business card. It only works if you give it away. Number 4, always be worth more than you're being paid. Number 5, find something you love to do, then find a way to get paid for doing it. Number 6, the best way to defeat your enemy is to make him your friend. Number 7, 9 out of the 10 things you worry about never happen. Number 8, when you're getting ahead in life, make sure you reach out and give someone a hand up. Number 9, live your life in such a way that if someone speaks ill of you, no one will ever believe them. And number 10, always ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Mr. President, I always thought that was an excellent set of 10 rules for everybody to live by. And I thought everybody in the body ought to know them. If anybody wants a copy of them, I'd be happy to email them to you if you'd like.
Thank you, Senator. The Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall.
Mr. President, I rise for purposes of announcement.
The Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we have good news and bad news. The good news is that we're 4 days away from the end. The bad news is that means we're going to have a couple long days between here and there. Tomorrow is going to be one of them. Our Senate clerk staff does an incredible job, and one of the things they do very effectively is move bills from the Senate down to the House after we've dealt with those. We tried to get some of the bills that were in the House to deal with them today so we would not be in and out as much tomorrow, but we were unsuccessful in that endeavor. So it is likely that we will have to go back and forth either 2 or 3 times tomorrow. So when we come in at noon, expect to be hanging around for a while. At last count, there are 99, I guess with the passage of one conference report, 98 bills still outstanding. We hope that the House will have acted favorably on a couple of them, but don't make early dinner reservations for tomorrow. Mr. President, the second piece is on Friday. we're going to go in at 10 o'clock, and we're going to do the page ceremony at 11 on Friday. Friday will be the first day where only conference reports are able to be taken up in the Senate. And so while we are celebrating our pages, that will enable our staff to move bills back and forth from the House and for conference reports to be signed, and then we will come in and finish business on Saturday. So, Mr. President, in between that, I'm sure Senator Norment and Senator Hanger are going to have the budget bill briefing on the final conference committee report available to the members. So the good news is 4 days left. The bad news is they're going to be a very busy 4 days. 4 if you include today.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Mr. President, I rise for purpose of announcement.
The senator has the floor.
There's 39 minutes left for the yard sale on the 3rd floor. 40 minutes? Oh, 4 o'clock. You've added an hour. Okay. All right. Till 4 o'clock. I got a text from my legislative aide. She says sales are brisk, but after all the talk of George Washington's distillery and his whiskey selling, my aide was rummaging through the credenza that I never open up, and it may already be sold, but I want you to know there's a vintage bottle, 2008 Trump champagne she dredged up out of somewhere on my thing. So it's been in there for years. I don't know if it's still available, but you might want to rush up there if you can't wait to get a bottle of that. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for that announcement, Senator. The clerk will please report any announcements on the desk.
Has all that been cleared with ABC? The pages. No page is allowed in Senator Wagner's office, okay? Today, Wednesday, February 22nd. The Wagner yard sale is still continuing until 4 o'clock. Sales are brisk, so if you want to do your Christmas shopping or your Valentine shopping for next year, head to 3 East. The Rural Caucus will meet at 5 p.m., 3rd floor East Conference Room. Tomorrow, Thursday, February 23rd, the Hampton Roads Caucus will meet at 8 a.m., 6th floor Speaker's Conference Room. The Republican Caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 2. The Democratic Caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow. And when we do so in the memory of George Washington and also in the memory of Private First Class Gary W. Martini, United States Marine Corps.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow, and that when we do so in honor of President George Washington and Private First Class Gary W. Martini, United States Marine Corps. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow.